I wanted to share with you guys tonight, and just thoughts and everything like that. As they come to me, I share them with you. Some of them are unrealistic, some of them are good. I think all of them have some basis in reality, at least for doing away with the authority of these central banks. But one thing I wanted to say is this: with this is probably going to be the title of this video. With a limitation of the exchangeability of dollars comes also an inability of the comes as well the inability of the Federal Reserve to to inflate the currency as much. And the reason why is because they can print up as much dollars as they want, but if they can't go out and use them readily, then that's not going to be an option for them. Now, if you have competing currencies that are based in gold, I think that's going to be more of an ideal thing for small businesses, because as a small business, if I'm receiving, and this is another thing I said, that these credit card, alternate currencies need to employ credit card readers, because if you can take a dollar and convert it into gold, then that person hasn't, and make it as a seamless event within the business model, then that's called bartering. And you can't, and bartering is legal, and you just made it an option for that business to get invested in gold without having to pay the 30 or 40% taxes that are associated with getting invested in gold. um, you know and you say, well, that's not liquid enough for me. But it can be liquid if you know you know like Square's pretty liquid. I mean, you get the money the next day. That's not bad. You know what I mean? I mean, there's no reason why why competing currencies can't live up to that. And a lot of small businesses today are dealing specifically with Square. Sometimes you don't even know who you're dealing with, and the reason why is because they're having less complications and less problems and more convenience for them to put some kind of thing in their project manager's hands, or whatever they want, without having to deal with the bank and deal with some lease on a piece of equipment that's $1,000 that you may or may not even be able to get back in one piece, because I mean, it's so cumbersome. And that's anyways, look, the point of the story is this: if you have a currency, if businesses were to realize, hey, we can get invested in solid assets without having to pay the income tax associated with the fact that unless you can prove to the IRS that gold is a necessary part of your business dealings, then you can't just take money out of your bank, and you just can't take company assets, invest them in gold, just because, well, it's a part of our, I guess you could as a part of a IRA or something like that, but the company itself can't just have it on hand, and it's just much more immediate. So either way, the point of the story is, I think that there's some financial incentives there, um, as far as investing and stuff like that. I've spoken with people that have millions of dollars and said, hey, can I invest can I invest company assets a into the stock market with company funds? And they said, no, you can't. And I'm thinking for corporations, because the Supreme Court has ruled that corporations are people. That the Supreme Court has ruled that corporations are people. So I mean, that might be different, but the point of the story is this: is that for small businesses, I don't think that's the case. And the truth of the matter is, we've got to find, for me, for any small business, I'm talking about very small, just getting started, but they've got a good product, whatever, they're doing a good job, but they're small and they're trying to get their feet off the ground. For them, having a stable currency is as valuable as anybody. Okay. And then on top of that, if they can do it without having to get to the point of setting up IRAs, and that comes down the road, you know, and investment portfolios, that goes into retirement accounts and stuff like that. I mean, that comes down the road once you get all that, 1099 and all that stuff set up. Um, you know, but I may have to do some research. I didn't think I was going to have to do any research on this, but you might actually have to pay taxes on that or not. I'm not sure as to whether or not you have to pay if that's taxed going in or not. I believe it is. The only thing that isn't taxed is like Social Security, and even that they've just looted it dry. Okay, so there might be some kind of loophole there, but that's, like I said, that still comes down the road, and so it still doesn't take into consideration. And then I'll come back and I'll do research and discuss that later, but probably, or put it in the description. I don't know. But the point of the story is that for the smaller businesses, it definitely relates to them, and it's a good step towards. It's a good step towards just not having dollars. Period. Okay. I mean, we need to make it to where people can't use dollars anymore. So everybody start thinking about how can we make it to where dollars are completely out of circulation. Here's how I think it goes. Okay. Firstly, it starts with some gold-based competing currencies, and it starts with people taking huge steps of saying like, hey, let's take credit card readers and attach them to our not Bitcoin, because I don't believe in them, but some gold-based. There are gold-based competing currencies out there. And so it would have to be done, the currency itself would have to give you the reader and say, here, this will make it easier for you to, get the currency into us. Because if you're doing that conversion, then you can get taxed. Okay. But if they do the conversion, then it's part of the bartering process. And they would probably have to legislate against that specifically. But if you could do that, then you could get the money in the form of that gold-based currency, and then you could be invested in precious metals as a small business person who's just gotten started. Okay, and then on top of that, you can, that I think would be a huge financial incentive that if people found out about it, because I don't think anybody's doing this. There's hardly even any gold-based currencies that I'm aware of. I've heard of one, but a lot of them are just digital, different algorithm, basically like a huge scam, if you ask me. Because why would you trust any currency whatsoever, even if it's a privately owned currency, such as Bitcoin? And I'm not a fan of them. I think it's the biggest scam in the world. And I'll get into that later, because they've got people. I've actually found this online, okay, where I've found video of people that have several computers hooked up to motherboards, and they're all it's just basically several motherboards sitting on a tray, and he's going, I'm having trouble, and you can, and I'll even just link it up probably later in my favorites or something like that, because I was thinking about using it in a video or something. But listen to me. The guy said, I've got all this fucking power getting drawn out of my house. I can, it's short circuiting his house basically. I don't remember what it was, but basically it was basically like the limit for what his house could even consume. I don't know if it was causing the breaker switches but he said it was just, and they take their power consumption levels and push them to the breaking point just to run computers that hack Bitcoin. Now, I don't understand this completely, but if you ask me, it sounds like a big fraud. I don't think that the founders necessarily envisioned, they wanted a gold-based currency, but they didn't want a bunch of people trying to hack a system and push their goddamn. And I can just imagine George Washington sitting there now. It's like, and if you just listen to me, they're going to have computers that are going to break into encryption, and when they crack the code and they hack each other, which is barely their fucking light consumption, and I mean their electrical consumption is going to be pushed to the breaking point just to do it. But by the time they hack in there and they figure, I mean, can you imagine? No, it does have nothing to do with sound money. Okay, it's the most ridiculous, absurd shit I've ever heard in my life. And if you ask me, it sounds like they're trying to make it to where nobody can have encryption technology that works because there's so many fucking people out there that are capable of hacking your shit. You know, because they've got computers set up that run their asses off so fucking hard. These computers run so hard. These computers run so hard that they take the house to the breaking point of what it can even consume. And I mean, just imagine it's working that hard just to hack an encryption code. I mean, why? What is going on, man? This is totally screwed up, man. There's no benefit to this. I don't give a damn what you said. I don't need it explained to me or nothing. I'm tired of even confronting it. I think it's ridiculous. I think this is the biggest fraud I've ever heard of. If anybody uses Bitcoin, you're a fucking idiot. Okay? And let me be clear with you about something else too. If we could get it, if we could get it to where, see, if we could get it to where they couldn't, if we could get it to where dollars were so poorly trusted, and people would say, well, I still need a way to make my anonymous transactions, people would start holding gold and stuff again. People would start holding gold again. People would start holding silver again. You see? And since really gold and silver is necessary for a currency to remain, for there to be enough confidence in it. I mean, being held by multiple competing companies that are backed in gold, they're going to have a large amount of gold on hand. Okay? That will help. Just in order to remain solvent, a lot of them are going to do like fractional reserve banking basically and hold just a fraction of gold on hand because, oh, well, you only want a certain amount of it at any given time. But those will be the ones that'll go out of business, man. This is just shit that we've learned in our government, in our banking system. You only have to have a certain amount of money on hand in order to lend out this much money. And the reason they did that, and I understand that now, is because it wasn't the actual small bank that was going to, induce a huge amount of fraud through something like that. It was the bank that's always getting bailed out through the back door. Yeah, they want fractional reserve banking because they don't have the assets on hand to lend out an infinite amount of money. And then just, it's like it takes so much time to print it up and get it to the fucking bank. I mean, why would they waste their time doing anything? They can do nothing properly. They're not a real market-based system. They're just a bunch of fraudsters. They could probably barely even keep it organized enough just to get the fucking shit delivered to their fucking bank. And they probably don't. You know what I mean? Because that would be too complicated because they can always just keep their doors open on nothing and just print up, as enough money as they need to pay the help and keep the offices open and then just loot out the economy with all these backdoor secret bailouts. This is what I'm saying. We've got to find a system that's based in gold that gets away from them. And another thing too, I'm sorry, my words start running together because I'm thinking so hard. But if you don't have gold to back a currency, then there isn't enough confidence to keep it afloat. In the same vein, if you don't have, if banks or if Fort Knox had all the gold, if Fort Knox had all the gold and and the bankers and all them have it all, then they can manipulate, then there will be no confidence in what we own because we really essentially have nothing. We can never even start a gold-based system up. I mean, they would have everything. And so I don't know, man. I mean, it gets kind of confusing at a certain point, but it just seems like to me a lot more security. I feel a lot more safer knowing that people have gold as opposed to some other entity, because we're getting so far and far away from that. You know what I mean? Farther and farther away from actually ever having gold. We entrust companies that are probably based in bailout money to have our gold on hand whenever we invest it in the stock market. I mean, who even knows how much gold there really even is available to us, period. And so It's not the point that I think that's going on. I just don't think there's any gold in Fort Knox. I don't know where the gold is. We don't know. I mean, at one point everybody had gold. It seemed like a better starting point than today, where people, all they have is these plastic cards in their pocket and some paper, which essentially has no value. You know, so to me, I would feel a lot better if the average person had some hard metal in their safe. I personally would feel better about it, because you have all the guns and you have all the metal and you have all the safety associated with your ownership of it, and your own voting process and your own will to seek what's best for yourself, as opposed to whoever wants to ruin you, or just the general ineptitude of society, period. Which, that's not really what I'm trying to say, but just people versus people and entities, and who has the gold and who doesn't. I mean, seriously, it's just one way of looking at it. And then on top of that, um, there's just going to have to be some gold-based currencies in order to bring the society out of this point where the government can just print up as much money as they want forever. And it needs to be based on what they can tax. You know what I mean? As opposed to what they can just take. Or print. I mean, because when you can print the money, I mean, it's just, everything's just going to fall to pieces. I mean, at the end of the day, they can just tax us to infinity, but some people are gonna, pay each other in gold or pay each other in cash, and find a way around it. Whereas there's really no way around it whenever they can print up as much money as they want, and it's a few people who are in charge, and they've got this whole argument set up that because I print up money, then I must be able to continue. And I mean, just imagine if you could have as much money on hand as you wanted. How many arguments could you come up with in an effort to defend some shit like that? Probably a lot. And that's pretty much what they've done. And I mean, other than that, I know that there has to be financial incentives in order to get people in the mindset of doing currencies backed in gold and doing gold, period, because people are dumb. They don't care to sit there. Or we're all basically, even myself, I mean, all of us are doing what we got to do to make it from day to day. So we've got to see how these systems can help us in those very immediate needs and desires of helping ourselves, from day to day. Well, I got to get paid. I mean, that's a big concern, right? I mean, if you, you know what I mean? So if there's nobody out there who wants to give you gold, and people aren't readily, able to give you cash, but they have, I mean, I've even had people before tell me, yeah, well, everything I do is cash. I always deal in cash. And then, whenever you show up to, receive the money, then they're sitting there going, well, oh, I don't remember ever saying that. So, there's hardly a chance where you're going to do business as a cash only business. And, so we're just not going to make that transition unless there's a financial incentive attached to it, and somebody makes it easy. Uh, makes it easy. Like I said, I've been talking too long, and I can't really just keep. This kind of subject gets me all screwed up in the way that I'm thinking and stuff, and I can't hardly even speak because I'm thinking of, like, I'm trying to envision a new society and thinking of it as I'm doing it. It's fucking complicated. Anyways, look. So the point of the story is this. If you made it to where they could, like I said, if you made it to where there was, a financial incentive attached to it, and if you made it easy, if you make it easy, it could work. You know what I mean? If somebody came to me, I mean, look, all of us are looking for that easy thing. I mean, businesses, the reason Square has been so successful is because they send you a little bitty tiny credit card reader in the mail, and then you hook it up to your smartphone, which you already have on hand, and all you got to do is enter in your account and your routing number. And then there's very little, I mean, maybe a little bit of verification on their end, do a couple transactions with you, figure out who you are. But even after that, I mean, the first couple times, maybe 72 hours the first time, maybe 48 hours the second time, but after that, it's just, you're just getting paid the very next day. And so that kind of thing is going to be really successful because it makes it real easy, and for businesses to get into like cryptocurrencies I'm not a fan of, but even any alternate currency, you've got to make it to where there's an incentive attached to it and it's easy. So for me, those two things are accomplished by having a competing currency based in gold to send that money directly into your account. I don't even remember why I did this fucking video. Why did I do another fucking thing? Anyways, I'll figure it out.